Welcome back. Well, with me right now is a gentleman who's going to tell you a sad tale, but he can help you out with that.
We'll see.
The president of Sterling Financial Advisors, Dan Ohlweiler. Dan, always good to see you.
Been gone for a couple weeks. You know,
Are you refreshed?
We're on vacation. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, you come back to a pile of mail and a gazillion emails. You know, so, but
that's true.
You know, we had a good time. So
that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going to talk about something today, and I was reading this, and it's really about inheritance and a beneficiary, and how working with the within your IRA, your beneficiary documents, it can be confusing for people. And unfortunately, when this gentleman passed away, he thought he had everything set in his, you know, the way that he did things, but it wasn't.
Well, we've talked about beneficiary planning before.
Yeah.
You know, I ran across this story, and it kind of illustrates what happens when, you know, sometimes attorneys will tell their people, throw everything into your family trust.
Right.
You know, make sure that it's in the, that's everything, you know, and distributions from qualified retirement accounts like IRAs, 401ks is a little bit different than just a personal asset or a brokerage account. And so naming beneficiaries, ownership, things like that can impact how it's distributed depending upon how it's listed on the beneficiary form, and this story kind of illustrated that.
Yeah, and what I was surprised about when I read this at first, it seemed like this gentleman and his family, through their trust and will,
had everything in
order.
Yeah, he had. The guy's name was Leonard Smith, and somebody had either advised him or he got bad advice from a broker or something. But on his beneficiary form, he didn't list any of his children's names. His wife had passed away, and so he had his children on there as the beneficiaries, or he wanted the children to be the beneficiaries, but he put it on the beneficiary form to be distributed according to my last will and testament. So you'd think, well, if it's going to be distributed according to how the will is, then I'm okay. The problem with that is it has to go to probate. You know, and once it goes to probate, you kind of lose control of those assets because it's now in the hands of the probate judge. Right. You know.
And I know that whether it's an IRA or, in this case, for me, I have a 401k or whatever investments I may have, you have that paper.
Sure.
You put a beneficiary down.
Beneficiary forms trump, you know, divorce decrees, they just trump, you know, wills and things like that, because those are legal documents, and that's who states that you want that money to go to. So he had 4 children. He had about $400,000 in his IRA. He wanted $100,000 to go to each of his children. He said, well, I just want it to be passed on according to my last will and testament. Well, when he passed away, they said, well, okay, we've got to go to court to see how it's going to be distributed. And all of a sudden, it didn't get distributed the way that he wanted. You know, it actually, the judge decided that it should go, rather than going to the 4 children, it should go to his wife. The problem with that was it was his second wife, who he had married 3 months before that. And
one of those situations.
One of those situations, and so she ended up inheriting the $400,000 because the children were not listed on the beneficiary form. And so the 4 adult children who were expecting to inherit that money ended up getting none of it, just because the beneficiary form was filled out incorrectly.
How often can someone change their beneficiary
form? As often as they want. As long as, you know, sometimes 401k plans and things like that, you can do it online, or other times the custodian will require you to fill out a form. And even filling out a form, you want to make sure that it's done correctly. So, because if you forget to update the form or something like that, it becomes a problem. If you've got 2 or 3 children and one of your children pass away, and don't update the form, then when you pass away, that has to go to probate, because the child is not there to receive that. So who has to determine where their share goes to?
Now, I notice on some of these forms, and correct me if I'm wrong, you can have a primary and secondary beneficiary, am I right?
Yeah, it's called primary beneficiary and contingent beneficiary. So if you and your wife are on vacation and you know, a cruise ship goes down in the ocean, okay? Then you have what is called contingent beneficiaries, which would be your children or your heirs or whoever you want that money to go to.
Okay.
But you always have a primary beneficiary. And on retirement accounts, you always want to probably list the name of the individuals that you want.
Okay.
So it gives them opportunities to what we call stretch that out. You've heard of stretch IRAs or inherited IRAs. And it allows them to start taking required distributions based upon their age. If you don't list
that's right. I remember you talking about
if you don't have them listed, if you leave it to your family trust, it kind of eliminates a lot of tax planning opportunities. Now they do have the option if a person inherits some money from an IRA, they do have the option of deferring for 5 years without taking anything, but then they have to take a lump sum at the end of 5 years. So there's some tax planning opportunities that you want to make sure that you give those people so they can kind of pick the best one for their own situation.
Let me ask you a question along the lines of a beneficiary. We're talking about IRAs here and 401ks and such,
403Bs and any
what
type
about
of
your general investments?
Personal, non-qualified.
Should you have a beneficiary there too if you have
it depends on the investment. Annuities, life insurance policies, insurance contracts usually have beneficiaries on that. It certainly helps to have, many times what we will do is we will name a spouse as the primary beneficiary, and then the trust is the contingent beneficiary. Okay. Because if a husband has an annuity contract and he passes away, his spouse can continue that annuity, or she can cash it out, whatever makes the most sense for her. If it goes to the trust as primary, then they can't continue that policy. It has to be cashed out. Okay. So there are tax implications here depending upon how you fill out that form. Most estate planning attorneys say dump everything into the trust. You know, well, that doesn't necessarily always be the case for insurance contracts or annuity contracts, because you take away planning opportunities for the spouse or the beneficiaries.
That's true. Look at all the thicket you can get into.
It's a tricky maze to get into, especially with these retirement accounts. You've got to be careful on, and a lot of times attorneys, you know, I've had existing clients come in and said, hey, we've just updated our estate planning documents and my attorney wants everything in the trust. Well, he doesn't know distribution planning. All he knows is estate planning. Okay, so there's some thickets that you run into if you're not careful.
See how Dan can help you out and his staff there. You know, it's always good to get opinions on this, and as Dan has said over and over again, what is right for one may not be right for another, whether it's investments or tax planning, whatever it might be. Give them a call.
We have our seminars starting up. They can go to our website, sterlingfa.com, and find out when we usually hold them up at Ruth Chris in Irvine. So if they would like to come in, that would be fine.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Give his staff a call. They're up there, up in Mission Viejo. They're right by the Social Security office.
On
Acero, very close by, and great people over there. They really are very nice.
We'll even have some fresh baked cookies for you.
I know. That's why I go up there. The number is 949-859-8900, and take advantage of that. Go up there and just have an initial conversation, and we'll go from there.
We'll just sit down again and give you a second opinion.
And you'll still give somebody a cookie.
And we'll still give them a cookie.
All right. Good to see you. Say hi to your family.
I will.
We'll be right back.